Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to physically set up a camera. And so this is part 1 of camera setup. For part 2 of camera setup, check out the webinar and make sure that you check that out, especially if you haven't taken any of the cameras for previous Wasatch Wildlife Watch projects. All right, to get the camera out of the case, you just slide it up and out like that. Then we're gonna take the camera out. Here's the little latch for it. So you just pull that open, it's gonna open right up. When you have it opened up, you're gonna make sure that the batteries are really nice and in place in there and really snug. That can sometimes cause the camera to actually not turn on, so make sure they're nice and snug in there. And then you're going to, at first, instead of going from off to on, you're gonna go from off to setup. When you do that, don't know if you can see that, but there's this red indicator light that's on. That's going to turn on, and that's how you can actually tell if the camera's picking up motion and picking up heat, is if that red indicator light goes on. Theoretically, anytime that red light was on, if the camera were set to on, that would be actively taking photos. All right, so once it's on the setup menu, this is the setup menu itself. You can see the camera function, so it will either be a video camera or a photo like this one. You'll see that the SD card is in and it's reading. You'll see the battery level right there. You'll see the date and the time. You'll see that it's taking a timestamp with every photo, that little T with a circle. That's really important that we have that on. And then you'll actually see the number of photos that are on the camera. And so this SD card has photos on there. Obviously, when you go to set up your camera, your SD card is going to be empty. If there are photos on your SD card during setup, then that means for whatever reason your camera's been taking photos. And so you're going to want to either let me know about that, or once you take it down, let me know that some of those photos are not actually from your camera site. Okay, then to actually through the settings, you're going to go to menu. You can go between settings by using the right and left arrows. You can change a setting by doing the up and down arrows. However, remember, when you go to actually set a setting, you have to click OK if you make a change. So let's say we wanted video and we clicked OK. That would actually save that, but then if we wanted to put it back down to camera, but we didn't click OK, it'd go right back to video. So make sure you set that change whenever you do that. And that's most important when you're setting the clock. So you do all your stuff, you make sure you set the clock correctly, the date and time are correct in this case. You have to make sure you set that before you actually exit out. All right, and so then the last thing you do before you actually turn the camera on is you check that date and time one last time. If that date and time is good, then you're good to go. And then to do that, you just switch it on to on, and you'll notice right here, this red indicator light is going to flash 10 times. That's really important. And once it's done flashing, the camera's armed and you're not going to see any other indications from the camera. It's supposed to be as stealthy as possible. So now you'll see the camera's armed, it's actively taking photos. We're not going to see anything else from that camera. But since you saw those blinking lights for 10 seconds, you know the camera's on. All right, so now our camera's armed, it's actively taking photos. So now it kind of becomes a race against time to get this thing set up so that we're not getting hundreds and hundreds of photos of ourselves. So you're gonna put it back in the case. We're gonna take our lock. Make sure when you're actually setting up the camera, if you have it in the unlocked position, the lock will never actually tighten for you. So you wanna make sure that that lock is in the locked position when you actually go to set up the camera. It's gonna make your life a lot easier. All right, you're gonna take the lock, feed it through the second hole right there, and it's gonna go all the way out the other side. Pull that through about enough so that the actual lock is directly behind the camera on the tree. That's gonna make it easier and a much tighter setup. So you wanna pull it through so that that part of the lock is gonna go around there. Then to actually set it up on the tree, you're going for about, remember, knee height or so. You're going to put it right there at knee height, and then you're just gonna body slam it right to that tree so that you have both arms to work with. Make sure that you fit the lock cable through the fat part of the lock. There's a little arrow. If you go the other way, someone could just theoretically pull it right out. So you wanna make sure that you're actually following that arrow and you put it through. They call these a python lock because this looks like a snake with its tongue out. Pull that all the way through. Make sure it's nice and tight. And when I say making sure it's nice and tight, you have full reign to put your foot up on the tree, pull this. To tighten these things, you pull here and you push on the lock. Once it's nice and tight and you feel like it's in a good position, I've got my wildlife trail right there that I'm angling it down towards. Go like this, push it down like that, just extra tightening, and then wrap it around, holding that tension as much as possible, making sure that's really nice and tight. Wrap it around, and then take this part so that you don't actually have this part of the cable flapping in front of your camera and setting it off. You put it right here in this hole, right here in the bottom. So you just fit it right through there, and boom, your camera's set up, it's ready to go. If for whatever reason you didn't like the angle of your camera, you needed to put it up or down or whatever, you would take a little shimmy, you put it in the back part of the camera there, or in the front if you needed to angle it down. And then the last thing you do, once it's set up, you go to where you're focused, and you make sure that you're looking directly at that lens and that you can actually see the reflective part of the lens in the camera. All right, now that we have a camera set up and we like where it's at, we love the location, we're gonna fill out that data sheet real quick. So we're just gonna go here, fill out the data sheet, make sure you're not in the view of the camera. And then at the very back of each data sheet, remember there's this nice little checklist that you have. It's gonna make sure that you go through every single step in the process. So once you've gone through that checklist, you filled out the data sheet, you grab this little placard, you make sure that the date, the time, the location is correct, and you go maybe 3 to 5 feet in front of the camera, and you just show it to the camera, moving for about 30 seconds or so. You want to move for 30 seconds because the camera shuts off every time it takes a string of photos for at least 15 seconds. So if you move long enough to guarantee you get a photo. Once you're done with that, camera set up, everything's put back, you're ready to go. Last thing, don't forget your keys. A lot of the times these are going to be right there in the lock. You went through all that process. Last thing you want to do, grab your keys and you're good to go. Camera set up, ready to go.